I'd like to welcome each of you to another edition of the Wright Experience. It is such a blessing to know that we are entering another calendar year in which we're trying to bring you this awesome content to make sure that you continue to hear from the very best leaders that we can find from all across the United States. Some of you know, or maybe don't know, but you'll learn tonight that I am a proud fan of the Cincinnati Bengals and have been for many, many years. And so we all know the unfortunate events that happened on Monday night with Buffalo Bills safety, DeMar Hamlin. And we are pleased to hear the progress that is going on with that young man. And we certainly, as Cincinnati Bengals fans and just as someone who loves to see people get better and be blessed, we certainly are pulling for the young man and certainly wish him a full and complete recovery. And our hearts go out to him, and certainly glad to hear the news that he is recovering. Well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is the 83rd episode, believe it or not, of the Wright Experience. I am absolutely excited about the progress that this show is making as we continue to move to bring you the very best content that we can find. And tonight we are entering a series for the next 2 weeks. We'll be featuring educators from the state of Texas. So the wonderful thing about this show is we're able to continue to expand and move on. We've already had one Texas educator. We have 2 more on the docket for the next 2 weeks. And so tonight, my educational leader is Miss Heather Volrie. She is an educator in the state of Texas and has been for some time. Ms. Heather Volrie is indeed an educator that works with the Texas Education Agency in the state of Texas. She has been working in Texas education for the past 13 years. And we are certainly excited to have her on the show tonight and look forward to having her aboard with us. We are going to bring her on shortly and have her talk to us about many of the wonderful things that she presents to us in terms of the world of education. She is also in the process of pursuing her doctorate in education at Texas A&M University in Commerce. So we'll talk to her very shortly. And at this time, in fact, I would like to welcome to the Wright Experience, Ms. Heather Volrie. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So I think we might have met at the NAPSE conference in Washington, D.C. I believe that's where we met. And so certainly I'm always thrilled to meet much younger educators than me who who are doing good work. And so excited to have you on the show. So Heather, if you'll start out just talking to us about the work that you do at the Texas Education Agency, and then also talk to us about your doctoral pursuits.
Most certainly. Yes, sir. So at the Texas Education Agency, I am a school improvement specialist. So what that entails is within the state, when a school is not performing up to state standards, they are required to do a targeted improvement plan. And so I work with a team that monitors those plans and that progress made with those campuses. We conduct conference calls with them. We do visits as well as visiting the campuses. I'll have some visits coming up in February where I'll take me out to East Texas, so that area. And so I'm looking forward to getting back into the campuses, really talking with the leaders and seeing the things that they're doing to implement their targeted improvement plans. We also conduct lots of training sessions with our local service centers, our education service centers. So in the state of Texas, I think it looks different in different states, but in Texas, we have 20 regions that service our local education agencies, our campuses and our districts. And so we work with those education service centers to get information to those districts and to those campuses. Working on my doctorates while doing this type of work has been extremely challenging, but it's been rewarding as well. I find that being at the state level uh, is beneficial in a sense. However, I do miss that on the campus feel, that some of the work that we work on in my doctoral program, the aspects of those projects. And so my classmates have been extremely helpful when I need assistance in what their principals are doing, or what they're doing at the district level to ensure that they have high quality instructional materials or training for their teachers. So I really have felt a big sense of community at Texas A&M Commerce going through this doctoral program. It's an all online program, so it's kind of different when I'm in Austin. I've got people in the program in Dallas and in other places in Houston, and so it's really nice to feel that community through the online program with the cohort.
And as you're going through those pursuits, I think when I did my doctoral studies, I was a high school principal, middle and high school principal, which had its challenges as well. What are some of the things that, if you're giving advice to people who are pursuing their doctorate in education, what are some of the things that you would suggest to them that you've learned?
Oh yeah, stay organized.
Okay.
Stay organized and set a calendar for yourself. Have a schedule. Map out your hours and what you do, and figure out what you're spending most of your time on. And if it's not beneficial, you need to remove it and work on those things that are going to push you towards, because it may be a 4 or 5 year process or a little less, but I promise you it's going to be worth it if you really take the time to identify where your distractors are. So organize yourself. One other thing that I like doing is getting the syllabus before the class starts so that I can go ahead and work on that schedule for myself. A lot of the professors are very kind to share that with me, picking up your books weeks in advance so that you can start your reading. You don't know where you're going to start, but most likely you're going to read chapter one eventually. So just get your books early, and when you're on an off time, like a Christmas holiday or a winter break, start reading ahead of time so you can have a little leg up on that work for the classes.
So we'll look forward when you're done with your studies and you've walked across state. We'll look forward to having you back on to do a little celebrating with you. But that's awesome. That's awesome, and thank you for that advice. I'm sure we have some listeners that are in the process of contemplating pursuing their EDD or PhD or what have you. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So Ms. Volrie, let's go into all across the United States, and I would assume in the state of Texas as well.
Mhm.
There is an issue with recruiting and retaining quality teachers. We have a major teacher shortage. Our universities don't seem to be producing enough education majors, and that's not their fault. I'm not saying
Mhm.
that that's their fault, but we just don't seem to be producing enough folks to fill classrooms right now across the United States. So, being an educational leader like yourself, what do we need to do a better job of in terms of recruiting and then training and retaining quality teachers, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think really recruiting them early on and
Okay.
helping them get into that pathway to education. So starting at the high school level, and try to really gain that interest in, these students are interested in doing the hard work of being an educator, the rewarding work of being an educator, really honing in on those students and finding pathways to getting them through their studies, through their undergraduate studies in education, so that we can have them come out ready to be an educator.
Mhm. So you're talking about things like teacher cadet programs or things of that nature. Is that right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. All right. Very good. So, um, as you look, because again, I've been impressed by the fact that you're a young educational leader. You certainly have longer to go in your career than I do. I'll say it that way. And so, talk to us about some of your perceptions of the future of education? What do you think education will be like as a whole, and then maybe even for you as time goes on?
Okay. For education as a whole, my thoughts on the vision of it does need to change a little. I
Okay.
think traditional education may not necessarily give us what we need for our society. I know that we are looking ahead and really trying to incorporate a lot of technology, but we need to ensure that the technology that we're incorporating at the student level, in all the grade levels, is really something that we're utilizing out in society. We have a global society now. It's not just what's going on in the United States of America. We are competing worldwide. And so we need to produce students that are ready to be global citizens. I think that ensuring that they have courses as well that assist them in being adults, as an elective course, maybe something that assists them with money management versus just a math course. I think that those are some things that would be beneficial as well. It just makes me think back to some of the courses I took as a high schooler to round out my degree program that I may or may not have used more than or past my college years, depending on what career I went into. There are many, many programs, many things that I use, maybe here or there, that really touch on those things that I learned in school. But there's a lot of stuff that I learned through my courses in college that really brought things back to home. And it was a lot of those reflective courses, a lot of those ethics courses, just things that made me really become a citizen. I think that some things need to move that way with our education. The future for me, I have a ways to go. I have a couple of years left in my program, and I am looking forward to continuing working in school leadership, continuing working in education. Um, my full aspirations for pursuing my doctorates is that I would love to become ultimately a deputy commissioner or associate commissioner in the state of Texas.
Okay.
Um, but I want to go by way of, I want to get back into a district. I would love to be an assistant superintendent or superintendent of a school district before becoming a commissioner, so that I can really have that sense of community feel and really understand everything that goes on to run a district before going towards the upper leadership in the state level.
So you really got a kind of path laid out for yourself. And for those listeners that are not in the state of Texas, a commissioner is similar to our state superintendent in
Yes.
North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, states like that. So what a great aspiration. And not all of us that do this work at the superintendent level have a desire to be a state leader. So that's commendable for you. And we know that you're going to get there. We know that you're going to get there. We're going to keep an eye on you and make sure that we support you in a way that we can, because that's what it's really all about. So while I have you, Ms. Volrie, let's talk about if you were to define the characteristics of an education professional. So, because we're getting beat up pretty bad right now in our profession. People talk about teachers have it made and so forth and so on, and we don't work much and so forth. And I've worked in different professions, and I'll tell you that education is just as taxing, in my opinion, as anything that I've ever done. So, but let's talk a little bit about if you were recruiting someone to come into the profession, what are some of the characteristics that you think are essential for an education professional?
Okay. Yes, definitely. You must be resilient.
Okay.
You must have that bounce back that you'll need when those negative comments come at you. You're doing good work. That is the outcome that you're looking for. That's the end in mind that you have. You want your students and your adults to be successful. You want to have a great program. So you've got to be resilient so that you're not um, dragged down in the dumps about some of the negative things that are said about educators. You want to have also, you definitely need to be reflective. An educator must reflect on their practices regularly, daily, to see where they can make adjustments, because adjustments shouldn't wait for a semester to end. Adjustments should come as soon as they're needed. If it doesn't work, it's not a problem. That's where that resilience comes in, that reflection comes in, you move on to the next thing. So those are two that I can think of, and as well as being ethical. If you're ethical, no matter what anyone says about you, it's not going to stand up, because everyone knows that you hold yourself to a high standard of ethics, and that's going to back you up if there's any negative conversations or any negative statements about the educators around you. So that's just a couple of things that I would say an educator would need. If I were hiring somebody, I would look for someone with a good record, a good ethical record, someone who has worked through dealt with some stress and challenges, and then someone who in the interview can definitely be reflective. If I ask a question, what is their thought process about reflecting on what they've done in the past and what they would have done?
What I noticed that you did not mention is this amazing intellect. You want people to be competent. I'm not certainly not saying that, but you talked about things that speak to the heart and the passion of the work that we do, which I
Yes.
think is key. Key. So thank you for saying that and telling us that. You are a parent of a school-age child. Is that
Oh,
correct?
yes.
Did I get that right?
Teenage girl.
Okay. All right. So, how has being a parent, in your opinion, affected your work as a school leader?
So I will say, as a single parent, at
Okay.
that,
Okay.
as a single parent at that, it's been a little difficult being able to manage all of the things.
Hmm.
Um, I've moved to the state because working on a campus in a district was very taxing on my time. I worked at a high school as an administrator, and I was not able to be there as much as I wanted to be as a parent. I
Hmm.
was there for the thousand other students, other kids I had, but the one that was in my home, I needed to be there a little bit more. And so that was kind of the catalyst for me moving into a role at the state level, to find that opportunity to have that work-life balance. But when I think about the skills that I've learned as a single parent, um, they're insurmountable. I was able to learn how to organize and delegate, as well as really pick up on other people's feelings and where they are. Having to, navigate this young person that was an entire person themselves, with their own feelings and their own thoughts and their own bad days. And so being an administrator and a leader, and also being a parent, they go hand in hand. There is an episode of Family Matters from a long time ago. I'm dating myself, but there's an episode of Family Matters where the mom goes for a job interview, and she says, they tell her she's not qualified, but then she goes back and says, "I'm a mother and a wife, and these are all the things that I have done," and she gets the job. And so that is something that I always think about when I consider how much I've learned from just raising another human being.
Hmm. Hmm. And all of that informs your success as an educational leader, I'm sure. Absolutely.
Oh, yes, I do everything I do for her. I will say that
There
I
you go.
make sure that that she understands the value of education. And I'll brag on her just a little bit. She is doing very well in school. She's involved in athletics, and she enjoys reading. I was a reading teacher, so it makes me very proud that she still enjoys reading as a freshman in high school.
All right, very good. Look, mission accomplished. If you've got her in high school and she still enjoys learning. That's great. That's great stuff.
Hmm.
So if we were to ask Miss Heather Volrie to talk to us about and look into a crystal ball, if you will, um, about the future of education, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Um, William Wright will be retired, by the way. But but what do you see as the future of education and some things that you think are essential as we move forward?
I think that the future of education must remain flexible.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think we are going to start seeing more instances where we don't know if this is the last pandemic that we will experience. Our students are dealing with a lot of trauma, um, even from other things other than the pandemic. So we have to really look at, as the adults, we must look back and say, what is it that worked really well? What did not work that well? And what can we take forward with us? And so I know over the next 5, 10, 15 years, there needs to be something that really brings forth a collaboration of efforts. I would love for a task force, if it's not already created, from educators across the nation and the
Mhm.
world to come together and really hone in to what would be the best or a new way of conducting education for all of our students. Um, I always ask people, in the district that my daughter goes to school in, in most districts that I've worked with, the times for school starting are staggered. But how do we know what time works best for which age group?
Mhm.
And I know there are studies out there, and most of this, some schools use that. But when you get to a district where they don't follow those guidelines, or you have elementary students going to school at 6:45 in the morning. Are elementary school students ready at 6:45 in the morning for their instruction? And is that partly why they're not able to attain those scores or those achievement levels that we're looking for them to get? Could it be the times of days where they're going to school? Um, how are we looking at homeschooling? Homeschooling numbers increased significantly over the past 2, 3 years. What are we looking at homeschooling that we can mirror in public education? And I know we have some competition in public education with charter schools. Well, what is the projected trajectory of the charter schools growth and the public schools growth?
Mhm.
We just got a email notification that there will be some school closures possibly in a district nearby. But the charter schools are increasing in numbers. And so, what is going to happen when there are more alternatives to public school than there are opportunities for public school in the next 10, 20 years?
Absolutely, and you and the key word, and I heard you saying all of that is flexibility. We've got to make sure that we are providing um, schedules for children that are flexible, school schedules, teacher flexibility, and things of that nature. I think that's a awesome insight into how we need to look at the future. And I've got a few more years, but you will have many more opportunities than I to affect those changes that need to be put in place. How about that? I'll
Well,
say
I'll be calling you for all of your knowledge and wisdom, because I can't go any further than what I'm learned.
okay. All right.
So
I'll hold you to that for sure.
I'll
And
definitely
as
be finding.
we're closing, I want to ask you one last question because I think this will be great for our listeners. So just today, I had a conversation with some folks at my work about how we cultivate and make sure that non-education majors um, are adept. In other words, how they get to the point where they can make the adjustment or transition. So Many years ago, I was a business administration major and got into teaching. But what insight do you have on that? How do we make the transition for teachers who may not be as prepared as education majors to
Okay.
get to where they need to be, in your opinion?
I love that question. I am a mass communication major.
Okay. All
So
right. So
I
you're a
did,
product of that then.
yep. So I did an alternative certification program. But I will say that my mentors, having a strong leader,
Okay.
really guiding me and really asking for that assistance. The program that I did my alternative certification through, they supported me my first year. They would come to my campus, they would walk with me through my instruction, they would model with me. So having that additional assistance that first year really helped. And I will say that it set the tone for me to stay in education past that fifth year, where we seem to lose a lot of educators after that fifth year. It set the tone for me to stay in education and continue to try and move forward. And if I didn't get it, I'll get it. And also being really transparent with my students. They knew I was a new teacher. They didn't know that I didn't go, they didn't know the whole process of going through, the education field in order to get my degree or getting an education degree, but they were excited to build that relationship with me.
Mhm.
And I always tell people the kids do not, and I'm not the only person that says this, but the kids don't care what you know until they know that you care.
That's
And
right.
so for those people coming from other degree programs, one, not necessarily making it easy for them, but making it doable, making getting into the teaching field doable for them. I think that's something that's very important. Even teachers changing states, going across state lines, making it a little easier or more doable for them to get into the field within that new state that they're in. Um, Really giving them that support that first year, if not first year and beyond, and then also having a strong mentor and strong leadership.
Hmm. And that needs to be ongoing. I absolutely
Yes.
agree with that. That mentoring and leadership, they don't need to be dropped at the end of the first year, but it needs to be a continuous process because we are more and more finding, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but we're having to hire a lot of teachers and educational leaders even
Mhm.
that are not traditional education majors. And
Yes.
so the way that we train them and prepare them has to be different to make sure that we get them to where they need to be. And so thank you for that insight. Ms. Volrie, if you'll hold on with me for a minute, we'll come back and close out the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
My guest next week on the Wright Experience will be Mrs. Marion Hamilton. Ms. Hamilton is also from the state of Texas, and she is a board chair of a school district in the state of Texas. We're looking forward to having her aboard next week on the Wright Experience. We are fast approaching our second year anniversary of this show. You all might remember that our very first guest on the show was Dr. Robert Taylor. Dr. Taylor was at that time just getting into a role as a deputy superintendent in the state of North Carolina. Dr. Taylor has recently, and we're very proud of him, he is now the state superintendent for the state of Mississippi. And so we're looking forward to having him during the month of February as well. Going to try to get him booked and set up to do that work during the month of February to celebrate our 2-year anniversary, as well as some other wonderful surprises that we have coming forth for you. I certainly hope and pray that you all are continuing to enjoy this content. It's been absolutely a pleasure in my life to be able to bring this content and continue to meet and bring some amazing guests to you to help us all grow and get better. As we continue to grow, we're also looking forward to you all submitting the names of people that you know that are in leadership, yes, in the field of education, but also across disciplines. We like business leaders and um, finance leaders and so forth and so on. So we're going to look to expand our portfolio as this show continues. It is absolutely my pleasure to have embarked on this journey. That was actually the vision of somebody near and dear to me over 2 years ago. As they always say, women are generally right when they tell you what to do. I'm certainly pleased to be able to bring this content. And of course, tonight, our guest is certainly no exception to the amazing leaders that we've brought. Ms. Volrie, I just want to say on behalf of my show, thank you, first of all, for being a part of this work that we're trying to do. We're absolutely proud of you and the work that you're doing, and look forward to having you back on the show as you continue to progress and make all of these wonderful accomplishments that are ahead for you. And if there's anything that I can do as a fellow educator to help you, I'm certainly glad to do that.
Thank you so much, and I've appreciated being invited to your show, and I definitely look forward to continuing to be a viewer with the hopes of being another guest one day.
Very good. And to the Wright Experience audience, I want to thank you for viewing the show tonight, and good evening.